Our guest for today is Aaron W. Beverly. Aaron is a storyteller, keynote speaker, a trainer, and also a world traveler. The thing that Aaron is also known for being the world champion of public speaking that is hosted by Toastmasters. He was the world champion in 2019. Toastmasters International Speech Contest is an annual public speaking competition that includes over 30,000 competitors worldwide. And in 2019, as I said, he won it in a speech that was titled An Unbelievable Story. And in 2016, for those who don't know, he won the second place in a speech called 57th World Title Speech. The thing about Aaron's speeches that they have a soul in them. They have a big message that awaits the audience to get to their heads. And that's what Aaron does. So for everyone who's watching, you can drop a like and a comment down below just to boost the algorithm so many different people can see this podcast as well. And that can help our channel grow. And yeah, you can see that cat over there. Maybe it will help you do this. And follow us on every social media that you can down below, which that you prefer. We would prefer Spotify, Facebook. Those are great for us. So, let's start. First of all, when I saw you at 2019, that was the first time I really saw you because the YouTube algorithm just recommended me you. And the thing is, when I saw your channel, when it actually started evolving in 2020, I saw a lot of tips and a lot of things that helped me, the average Joe, to maximize who I can be in terms of public speaking and also communications. So first of all, what are the fundamentals for the average Joe to know in order to increase his skills from 0 to 80 or 0 to 70 to be a better communicator or maybe public speaker as well?
Well, there's a lot that can go into the fundamentals of public speaking. But the one thing that I just tell people from the get-go is just start. Because a lot of people, they just have this reservation and this fear of public speaking, and it keeps them from acting. One of the things that is most memorable to me is that when I was competing, I had achieved second place in the 2016 World Championship of Public Speaking. It was a little bit after that where a woman reached out to me to congratulate me at work. And she said, "Aaron, what you did was amazing. I cannot imagine doing something as similar." Then I told her, "Oh, you can join this organization. It's called Toastmasters, and you can get better at public speaking. You can start today, blah, blah, blah." And then she says, "No, that's not going to happen because I'm about to retire." But sometimes I sit and I wonder how much different my life would have been if I did not avoid public speaking like the plague. So you really don't want to be in that situation where you're regretting your life decisions or you're regretting not being active in public speaking, all because of fear. Personally, I like to think that there's no such thing as a fear of public speaking. What you fear is an aspect of public speaking. It's up to you to identify what that aspect is. Do you fear speaking in front of a large crowd? Do you just fear speaking in front of a senior manager? These are different things that you want to try to figure out. But at the end of the day, you want to get started. Now, when you get started, that's when you can start learning the true building blocks of public speaking. And I would say the most important building block of public speaking is having clear and concise organization in your presentations. So if your speech or your presentation is clear and concise and organized, then that's going to take you a very long way. Then the second part is really understanding what your specific message is. So really understanding what the point of your presentation is. If people can understand the point, if people know what point you're trying to get to, then that's really the objective of public speaking, is to clearly explain in an organized way what your point is.
And how do you use structures like that? You're saying like to get like to move a message to the audience in more clear way. That's not such an easy task. It's like
Yeah.
it's like an art, you know, because you're taking something from your own brain to the audience, which is big and have their own looks of life. So how do you look at the craft of delivering a message? Meaning that how do you approach the delivering of the message? Do you expect the audiences to maybe be more politically correct, for example? Or
Mhm.
like how do you move that message to them in such a way that would mean no harm, but
Yeah.
only good, probably?
Yeah. Well, there are actually two things that come to me when you just mentioned that just now. The first thing is the golden rule of public speaking. This is something that I believe that it is universal throughout all of public speaking. If you are going to give a message to somebody, this rule applies to you. This golden rule is KYA, know your audience. You have to do the research beforehand to know who it is that you are speaking to. If you are here in America, for instance, and I'm just using this as an example, not a declaration of my political affiliation, but if you go into a Democratic convention and you're talking about Republican values, then you're going to be rejected because you clearly didn't understand that audience was Democratic. Same thing, if you go to a Republican convention and you talk about Democratic values, you're going to be rejected because you didn't know who that audience was. You really need to do your research, understand who the audience is, what mediums do they like to utilize when they have a presentation? Do they like visuals and PowerPoints? Do they just like to have demonstrations? Do they like to get involved during the presentation? These are the different things that you can ask. You can ask the organizers of an organization. Do they have any background on the demographics of the audience? What is the makeup of the audience in terms of gender? What is the makeup of the audience in terms of age? Try to figure out all of these different things because this information is going to help you craft your message towards that audience. Now, after you know your audience, I believe the second most crucial step, I would say it's the silver rule, not the golden rule, but it's really important as well. And that is DTOKS.
Okay.
I call it detox. And it's what do you want your audience to do, think, or know by the time you are done speaking? I call it my do, think, or know summary, or detox for short. And the reason why I call it detox is because as you are preparing your presentation, just how a body detox cleanses the junk out of your body, a speech detox or a presentation detox is going to keep the junk out of your presentations. So when you are answering this question of what do you want the audience to do, think, or know, you are going to answer that question in 10 words or less. And that's really going to help you refine your message and really understand what point you're trying to get to the audience. Now, as a fair warning to people who are jotting this down, I will tell you that it's listed in order of priority. So doing is the strongest action that you can possibly have. If you want your audience to do something specific, if there's a decision that you want them to make, if there's an action that you specifically want them to take after you're done speaking, you need to define what that is, and it's going to be the strongest action that you could possibly think of. Thinking is the second highest in priority, because you're going to want to change somebody's opinion from one way of thinking to another way of thinking. Knowing is the weakest of the actions, because if you just want somebody to know something, okay, you just told them. That's it. Now what? The only reason why know is in there is because, number one, it makes the acronym work a little bit better. Detox sounds a little bit better.
That makes sense.
Another acronym that I could have used. But also, there are occasions where you just need to share information. You don't need your audience to do anything with it. You just need to tell them that's it. But try to not prioritize knowing, because it's the weakest action and it's the most general action. If there's something specific that you want the audience to do, that's going to be the highest priority. If there's a certain way that you want them to think, then that's going to be the second priority.
Wow, that's absolutely fascinating, because I'll give you an anecdote. Like in my way, in school, I tried to deliver a message, for example, about, I had a presentation about Albert Camus. He's a philosopher, and he's talking about the existential like problems of us and this and that. And, you know, when you are talking about being a rebel, like in my instance, and talking about this message of living life and all of that, it's, in my opinion, it's hard to do call to action, because you're talking about people's lives and how they need to change it. Actually, not to change it like in an instant, but change it gradually. But that's hard, because you're going to people's souls. So how do you encounter those problems in your speeches of, for example, race that you gave and all of that? Because those are fundamental problems that trigger us on everyday basis, like the political problems, like the everyday problems that we have, actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're definitely right there. And you've alluded to it a couple times already. It is definitely an art. It's not a hard science. So a lot of it comes from, again, knowing who your audience is and what you can say and what you shouldn't say. Then the other part of it is to, if you have a political message, for instance, try your best to not make it as political as it could be. So you want to try to find a theme or a universal connection that can connect everybody so that we can all get on one page. For instance, my 2019 World Championship speech, I do talk about race, I do talk about acceptance, but I tell it via a story. I tell it in a humorous way. So that way I'm kind of taking out the heaviness of it without taking away the seriousness of it. So I'm telling you my story, and then I'm giving you a very serious point at the end. And it's a message that everybody can get behind, because it's a universal message of accepting people despite their differences. And it's something that is still relevant to this day. It's going to be relevant forever, in my personal opinion. But when you're giving a message and you're telling a story like that, you're talking about something more personal, you're talking about your experiences. And if you're able to do so in a way that's provides some levity, then you can do that as well. But the key is to try not to make it as hardline political and say, this side is wrong, this is why I'm right. If you go into that approach, you're going to get rejected by at least half of your audience.
Half of my audience. Okay, that's a lot, actually. Well, in that perspective, so you're using some things that smooth the message, and that's good. Like, because there's the Oscar Wilde, like a literature guy, that said, like, you need to make your audience laugh or they will kill you because of the heaviness of the message. And that's what he said like 100 years ago, something along those lines. Well, I actually agree. I mean, I think that we take things too seriously, but with the, like, we understand why it's too seriously. We are evolving to taking a lot of things too seriously. And like, for example, you said laughter, that helps you clear your message and make it better sounding to the other person, because the subject is heavy and you need to make it, lighter. And do you have any more things that make it lighter, actually?
Well, there are some things that can make it lighter. So again, humor is a great way to do it, but you also want to make sure that that humor isn't coming at the expense of people who believe something different than you do. So usually when I'm trying to incorporate humor, it's usually in a way that's poking fun at myself. I figure that I'm the best subject for humor because I'm not going to be offended if I talk about myself.
Yeah,
so
makes
it's
sense.
a little bit easier to talk about yourself rather than other people. Now, other ways that you can do it is, again, not going down the line and picking a side. So you don't want to pick a side and say, this side is right, this side is wrong. That's the end of it. That's the end of the argument. No. So you want to try to be as objective as possible. So try not to make assertive statements that will clearly put some people in one box and other people in another box. Something else that I've learned not to do, if you want to avoid being political in your presentations, or you want to smooth out the political nature of your presentations, don't mention politicians, or don't mention the names of politicians, because as soon as you mention a name, it doesn't matter if they agree with 90% of what you have to say. Because you mentioned that name, they're going to place you in a box and say, oh, you like Barack Obama, so I'm going to consider you a Democrat. I'm a Republican, so I'm not going to listen to anything that you say. And then on the other side, oh, you like Donald Trump. I'm not going to listen to anything that you have to say because I'm a Democrat and Donald Trump is the devil, blah, blah, blah. See, that's the type of stuff that you don't want. And it all comes from mentioning a name. There was something that I was watching earlier today, and it was from a Republican man, and he was expressing his views. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? I agree with you. But if it was somebody else, maybe they see that, oh, he's a Republican, he's a conservative. They're not going to agree with that, instead of listening to what it is that he's saying. So it's really hard to see a politician and not put them into boxes. So you want to try to avoid those names, because that's going to put you in the same box, because everybody doesn't have that objective thinking that you may have, and they're going to put you in a box as soon as they hear a name.
So it's about categorizing you from the get-go. So if you say those names, they will categorize you. That's interesting. How much does an audience have like power over you in a speech? Like if for example, you give a good speech about, let's just say, not even politics, but something like the vaccines or something along those lines. You're giving something funny. You're just delivering it, for example. How much the audience has an effect on the speech being better or being good? Like, how much do they have power? Because of course they have power, but how much in the speech?
Well, honestly, I think that the audience has the most power in the presentation, because they're going to decide if the presentation was good or not. But it's up to the speaker to find that right audience. So we keep coming back to that golden rule, KYA, know your audience. You as a speaker have to find your tribe. You have to find the right audience that wants to receive your message, or is going to benefit from your message. I'm not going to go into a hostile environment with a message that I know is going to be rejected just so that I can get some exposure. I don't want that type of exposure. I want to find the people who I can help. It's just like how you want to find your certain niche. If you're on YouTube, you can't just start YouTube just doing every single thing and think that you're going to become a YouTube star with millions of subscribers because you're catering to every single person. If you cater to every single person, nobody's going to like what you're doing.
So will you do a target, for example? That's interesting to me in your own channel. Do you have a targeted like audience that you want to bring to your channel? Because as you said, like for me as a podcaster, I have that problem actually. I'm looking for a young, not young teens, but above 18 that are also critically smart and also curious about the world. I think it's too broad. So in your example, put it into perspective for me so I can understand what it means to go for a niched audience.
Yeah, so for me, it was fairly easy because I knew that my topic was going to be public speaking. But public speaking in itself is still very broad. So I had to try to figure out who I can help with certain videos with public speaking. So there are some videos that I release that are going to be catered toward beginning public speakers. And I know for this video, I'm going to be helping a person who's just starting out with public speaking. So what does that person need to know about? They need to know about what the fundamentals are. They need to know about how to get over the fear of public speaking. So I make content for that. Then you have a different branch, a different group of people who I can help. These are Toastmasters. And Toastmasters are very contest focused at a lot of times. So I make speech contest content as well, giving tips on how to compete in a speech contest. And it's still valuable for people who may be beginning public speakers, but it's specifically catering to the need of this target audience, but still within the theme of public speaking. Now, I haven't gotten to this point yet, but when I start making more advanced content or advanced public speaking techniques for maybe professional speakers, that will be for that specific audience, but it's still going to be within the realm of public speaking. So I feel that you can start broad, and then as you go down and you create certain videos, who within that broad umbrella that you have can you help? And it's going to be more so of a piece of content by piece of content perspective rather than a channel perspective or a podcast perspective.
Wow. Okay. That's powerful, actually. So you target broad, but you focus then on the tree, on a specific tree, to grow the roots bigger. To grow
exactly.
Yeah. So, wow, that's actually good advice, because, many of us as people miss the cake on it, miss the cake on targeting the proper audience to increase our growth. So yeah, I actually agree with you. I think we'll switch a little bit the subject, because I want to understand, how do you go to those speeches? Meaning that, how do you study those people who make you be more better? Because in my perspective, when I'm studying a podcaster, I'm studying Joe Rogan, because in my in my way of delivering a conversation is my ideal, nonchalant, just speaking, doing it in such a way of winging it, but doing it in a way of also researching the things that you wing to make the conversations better. Well, how do you approach studying those people? Approach studying those, in my example, Joe Rogan, but in your example, it's maybe the Barack Obamas, if I'm not mistaken, or those people. So explain it to me.
Yeah, sure. And you're actually alluding to it a little bit with what you were just saying there. You start by focusing on people that you admire and like. And then you dive a little bit deeper. What is it that I like about this person? Don't just say that I like them. What is it specifically that you like about them? And you just mentioned that the more casual nature of the conversation, that's something that could prompt you to say, okay, now how do I make my podcast more conversational? Same thing with me. When I first got into public speaking, I started watching other public speakers, and I would really be attracted to those speakers that seemed more conversational in their presentation. Perfect example of this is a guy by the name of Kwang Yu Yang. He was in the 2011 World Championship of Public Speaking that Toastmasters holds. And Kwang had this story, and it just seemed so engaging. It was so conversational. And I thought to myself, I want to give a story like this. I want to tell a speech like this. And that got me interested in competing, number one, but it also got me thinking, how can I start to tell a speech like that? It took me a while because I had to find my own style, and I had to learn from other people. So there were certain aspects of other speakers that I liked, and I wanted to incorporate things that they did, not necessarily stealing what they did, but just trying to learn the techniques that they were using and trying to shift those techniques to my style and to my stories. And it takes a while. You have to be a scientist, if you will, when it comes to speaking. And there's a quote that I absolutely love. Sometimes you have to play a long time before you start playing like yourself. That's from Miles Davis.
Oh,
and he's speaking about music and jazz, but it really applies to anything in life. If you are passionate about something, just start doing it, and you can try to emulate other people that you admire, but it's going to take a while before you start to learn different things. It's going to take you a while to learn what makes you unique and what your style is going to be.
I take it to our world, because when we are born to this world, we actually trying to test the limits of it, meaning that We don't understand how it goes, how it works, how we need to do our things. But we begin by crawling, and then begin walking, and then begin running, and then climbing. And little by little, we are understanding the world that we have. So in that saying that, like, maybe in the start, you will not know everything. That's okay. Just you learn as the process goes. The journey is important. So like in that perspective, like you have been like how much time in public speaking? Like 14 years, 13 years, something along those lines? Maybe even more.
So if I count the actual time that I joined Toastmasters, it's been about 12, 13 years.
Yeah. So how do you, like, it's not about recapping, but looking back, how did you start? Because many of us, and it's not only in public speaking sphere, actually, in everything in life, we encounter new roads that we take. And sometimes we are attracted to testing it and we don't know the outcome. We want to be the best, but we don't know the way to be the best. So meaning we start from something, but we don't know where we'll end. So tell me about that journey of yours, because I know it has a lot of cool stories, but tell me more about like the outlook of, I don't know if it will be great, but maybe I have this potential in me. Let's find out.
Yeah, no, that's really something that, actually, before I go into that, something that you mentioned before that I think is a great analogy about being born into the world and then you learn to crawl and walk, etc. I think a baby is the best analogy that you can use, because a baby starts out by imitating. They don't know the things that they're saying. They just say what they hear. So that's how it is for people. When you first start something, you have to put yourself into a air quote baby mindset where a lot of times you're just going to be imitating people. You're just going to be emulating the things that you see and that you like. And you're going to avoid the things that you don't like. As you get older, as you get more experience, you're going to find that you like doing things a certain way. You are catering to a certain style. So that's what you have to, that's the mindset that you have to have in everything. And that's the mindset that I really did have when I first started in public speaking. So I started public speaking out of sheer necessity. I graduated in 2009 from college, and that was right in the midst of the Great Recession. Basically, I'm about to graduate, and all of the job prospects that I thought that I was going to have, they're now gone. I have no idea if I'm going to have a job coming out of college. I have no idea how I'm going to pay off my student loans. All I know is that I need to do something, or else I'm going to have a crappy life. Public speaking was always identified as something that could help you stand out. I knew that for at least the last couple years in the past when I was in college. So what I did, I just decided to say, you know what? I'm going to join this organization called Toastmasters. And for people who don't know, Toastmasters is an organization that is worldwide. It's in hundreds of countries around the world. And their goal is to help people improve their public speaking skills and their leadership skills so that they can improve their life, their career aspects, et cetera, et cetera. I joined Toastmasters in 2009. When I joined Toastmasters in 2009, I was a person who did not like public speaking. I hated public speaking. I wanted nothing to do with it. I wanted to be the person who would stand in the background and just be silent. That was where I was most comfortable. That was my comfort zone. But I knew if I wanted to have a better life and wanted to stand out above the crowd, I had to get public speaking under my belt. So I joined in 2009 and I just started practicing, and I started emulating the people who I liked. At that time, I was really big into Tony Robbins and another speaker here in the United States named Les Brown. So really more of the motivational, rah, 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 you need to do this type people. That was my style at first. And people would call me like, oh, yeah, you're the motivational guy. And I didn't want to be just the motivational guy. as I got more experience, I saw other speakers and I saw different things that I liked. I mentioned before, I liked the way that some people were more conversational in their tone when they presented, how easy it was for people to make people laugh. I wanted to do those things. So I just started testing. I tried different styles, and a lot of times those styles didn't work. There was one occasion in 2014 where I competed in the international speech contest, again, that Toastmasters holds, where I decided I was going to be super dramatic in my presentation. I was going to have these voices and it was going to just be this grand event. But I was told by one of the previous world champions that that speech wasn't going to get me very far. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean? I just got this far with this speech. I'm going to take it. And I know that you're going to be proven wrong. And he wasn't proven wrong. He was proven 100% right. It didn't go over well at all. I ended up embarrassing myself, but it was experience that I needed because I needed to know what didn't work and get examples from people that could make something else work. And it was just a matter of testing and testing over again until about 2016. I just told a personal story about a bad dating experience. I didn't think anybody was going to like this story or this speech, but that speech is what ended up getting me to the World Championship of Public Speaking for the first time. And that's when I said, okay, this is the style. This is what I'm going to go with. I'm going to now learn how to enhance this style that I've chosen.
Well, first of all, in terms of the dating sphere, you talked about dating in 2016, you talked about race in 2019. Like, those are things that are resonating with people. There are problems that we encounter as a society, and they're big. Well, if I was talking about giraffes and tigers, maybe, and talking about how I feel bad about them not getting the land they need, for example, do you think the proper way to conduct a winning speech, for example, is to talk about things that resonate with people, that touch them in the right places? Or I can even talk about the ant in my room and just say, oh, look at that ant. Well, you see, that's all we are all ants, small micro things in the universe, for example. So yeah, I would like to hear that, because actually I think that's the resonating is super important.
No, resonating is, I would say, most of the mission. You want to resonate with your audience. You want to, at the end of the day, influence your audience in some type of way. So there are many ways that you can do that. And you can do that with an analogy. You can do that with a story. For instance, in my speech, for the most part of that speech, I talked about trying to protect a pair of shoes. So what seems so mundane could be turned into a very strong message because it's maybe an analogy for something. It's a metaphor for something. There are people who, and to give people context who may not have any idea who I am, in 2019, I gave a speech in the World Championship of Public Speaking where I was invited to India for a wedding, and I was a part of this tradition where the groomsmen had to protect the shoes of the groom from the bridesmaids. And there are just a lot of hijinks that ensue. I'm not going to spoil anything in the story. You can watch it on YouTube if you want to watch it. But basically, there are people who lived in India who came up to me afterwards and just said, Aaron, how did you take such a regular, mundane thing and turn it into a world championship speech? And it's just all a matter of perspective and trying to tie it into a message that can resonate with people. So the story that I told was a way to get people involved. It was a way to make them laugh. It was a way to get us a connection with each other. And then I hit them with a moral of that story, which was the message that, hey, even though I was this Black man attending an Indian wedding, I was still accepted like I was a member of their family by being a part of this tradition, as crazy as it was. So
Wow.
yeah, it's all about resonating with the audience. That is one of the primary goals.
Yeah, and you talked about it, about gaining experience and just learning the craft from the other people, like the people who won the thing, who came to the mountain, who was on the mountain, on the top of the mountain. And like when you were there, when you saw them, when you were near them, what is the best advice you received from those people, or a couple of best advices? Because, we try to, as I said, resonate with our story. And sometimes it's hard, man, because our outlook on life is different, probably because we live in different continents. We're in different age demographics. Whatever races differently, we have a different outlook. So what are the most important things that you learned from those public speaking masters or from authors in history that made you be to made you a complete public speaker or a better public speaker?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I always teach people or tell people is that you don't always need to find the person at the mountaintop. A lot of times you just need to find somebody who's higher up than where you are.
Okay.
So when I first started with public speaking and competitions, I just tried to do it by myself at first. And a lot of people try to do that. They don't want to seek out the help. They may have an ego or whatever. They may just not want to bother people. But it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to seek mentorship. It's okay to get a coach. But the coach that I got, he wasn't a world champion of public speaking. Now, he did come close. He was a second place winner back in 1992. But what I saw wasn't a world champion-like speaker or a person who was one step away from being a world champion. I saw that as a person who has more experience than I do. So there is something that he can teach me. A lot of times we overlook those people who can teach us because we're so busy looking up at the mountaintop that we fail to see the person who's standing right next to us that's just a little bit higher up, that is reaching out their hand and can pull us up. So try to find the people who have more experience than you and learn from them. Now, you still can get inspiration and you can still learn from people that have reached the mountaintop if you can get them, but it's not a necessity. It's not going to define whether you make it or not. I'll tell people all the time that in order to become a world champion of public speaking, you do not need a world champion of public speaking. In fact, one of my personal goals was to make sure that I did not receive coaching from a world champion of public speaking. Number one, I just wanted to tell people that, hey, my mentor, he was the one that taught me. He was the one that taught me these fundamentals. I want to give all this credit to him. But two, I just wanted to, again, prove that point that I learned from various sources. I didn't get specifically coached by somebody that has a trophy, but you can still learn a lot from other people. So even if you don't get direct mentorship, you can go onto YouTube. You can see other speakers who you like, who you want to emulate. If they have content like mine on YouTube where you can learn from them, you can learn from their analysis, you can learn from their tips and their tricks, do that and try to test out what it is that they're saying. So it's a way to receive indirect mentorship, if you will. But there are various ways that you can learn. But some of the people that I've personally learned from, I was first inspired to get more involved in public speaking by Barack Obama. I always really enjoyed the energy of a Tony Robbins. Even though I can't emulate that, I tried and failed horribly. I am not a Tony Robbins type of speaker, even though I can love his message.
Where did you try it, actually? Did you try it in a competition or something?
I tried it in a competition. That's where I was saying that I was going to be dramatic. I was going to make these voices and I was going to motivate people like, yeah, you need to do this. And no, it didn't work.
Why did that work in your perspective?
Because it wasn't me. It was Tony
wasn't you.
Robbins. I was
Wow.
trying to pretend. I was trying to be the Aaron Beverly version of Tony Robbins, where I just needed to be Aaron Beverly. That was the lesson that I ended up learning. And it's funny, the speech that I created that ended up getting me to the World Championship of Public Speaking, the point of that speech was just about being yourself and just being proud of who you are.
And how do you discover oneself in that journey? Because, you know, in some perspective, you said, like, I try to mirror or try to emulate the Tony Robbins, for example. And you encountered a lot of falls in the way. That's good. How did you came about to understand the character of yours in that way? Like, to understand that, yes, maybe I'm introverted and I can make that thing work. I can make myself a high-class Toastmasters candidate. So it's interesting for me.
So again, it goes back to that baby analogy. That's why I think it was genius of you to just bring that up that way, because that's the perfect analogy. A baby will try to walk. It's going to fall a lot. And it's the same thing with you and your style. Like, you're going to fall a lot, but you're going to keep trying. And you're not going to always try to do the same thing over and over again. A baby isn't just going to try to stand up on its own weight all the time. It's going to try to prop itself up, and then it's going to try to balance itself and then try to walk. There are various ways that it's going to try, but at the end of the day, it's going to start walking. So you have to find a way to prop yourself up, and you're going to fall a lot. Some people are going to fall more than others, but it's a matter of just keep getting up and keep trying over and over again. And the falling is really what I view as testing things out. So I tested out a different style. It didn't work. I sat down and I analyzed why it didn't work. It didn't work because I was acting like Tony Robbins. It didn't work because I wasn't telling a personal story. It didn't work because I wasn't being authentically casual. So that was what I had to try to incorporate in my speeches. And once I sat down and started analyzing why something didn't work, I was able to learn more about things that could possibly work and test those out. Once I tested those out and they started working, that's when I latched onto something and said, okay, I like this. It feels better to me. I want to now enhance this. So now I'm not trying to be Tony Robbins anymore. I found something that works for me, and I'm going to try to build upon that.
Wow. I'll tell you what, because that analyzing stage that you said is, for me, so daunting. It's so difficult because often of us, people are trying to avoid it because it's very difficult to be honest with yourself and say, yes, okay, Moses, you was shit in that speech, and that's okay. You did not deliver the message. You was over arrogant. You thought that thing would work, but it wasn't. It did not work because they did not laugh, for example, or did not clap at you. That's okay. Well, it's so interesting to me. How did you come to the stage of analyzing what you do, and how do you do it, like, figuratively, like step by step, practically? Like, how do you speak? Go to the speech, the specific speech, and just analyze it and say, okay, in the beginning I did this, in the end I did that.
Yeah. Well, it starts with this thing, your cell phone. You have to start recording yourself. You have to start audio recording yourself. You have to start video recording yourself when you have these speaking opportunities. And when you do that, the next important critical step, and it is extremely hard to do, is you have to listen or watch the recording. And it is hard. It is so hard to listen to yourself for the first time. It is so hard to watch yourself for the first time, especially when you know that a presentation didn't go the way that you wanted it to. But you have to sit down and you have to look at what it is that you did. This is something that comedians do all of the time. One of my favorite movies is, I think it's called Comedian, and it's by Jerry Seinfeld. Forgive me if I'm blanking on the title, but I do believe it's called Comedian. And it's about Jerry Seinfeld, how he just ditched all of his old comedy material and he was going to start building up new material. And he's showing this process of going to the nightclubs, of bombing, which in comedian speak means that you're doing very bad. And this is Jerry Seinfeld. This is after the show Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld.
Wow.
So he's going on stage and he's doing absolutely horrible. He's trying to tell these jokes and nobody's laughing. And he must feel like crap because, man, I'm Jerry Seinfeld. I'm a millionaire comedian, and yet I can't make people laugh right now. But it was just a matter of sitting down, watching his performances, and then analyzing like, okay, they didn't laugh here, but did they not laugh because of a certain facial expression that I was making? Or was it taking me too long to get to my punchline? And that's why they weren't laughing. So he sat down and he started to analyze and refine. And again, it goes back to that word testing. So something didn't work. So you switch it around a bit and you try it out on a new audience. And maybe now you get a small chuckle. So now you want to build upon that chuckle. Like, okay, they chuckled at this. Can I get a third audience to make that same chuckle? And you get the third audience to make that same chuckle. Now you're onto something. Now you have something that you can build upon. Like, how can I make this chuckle a stronger laugh? And a lot of times it was Kevin Hart. So I learned a lot from comedians. Those are some of the other types of speakers that I emulate and learn from. He would go to 5 nightclubs in a night just to refine one line.
Wow.
So hours and hours of work, hours and hours of waiting for your turn just to test out and refine one line in his routine.
That's powerful. That's so powerful, man. Like, can you imagine those guys were so infamous in our eyes? We succeeded a lot. We've been through a lot, through it all. We can say. First of all, I can correct you. Like the title is indeed comedian. You can watch it on Netflix. Yeah, and you can watch Aaron's channel as well on YouTube as well if you're checking comedian. And just saying. But the thing is about the Kevin Hart's, like the way of doing that, going to the open mic nights, testing yourself, man. That's such a grunting task. It's grunting. Like, for example, in Israel, it's hard. Like, I cannot go to a Toastmasters. So, like, what do you think I should do if I don't have a Toastmasters in my region in order to test myself? Probably.
Well, the great news is that you probably still can join a Toastmasters. So, and before we started, you mentioned that you were 18. So that's the golden age for Toastmasters. So now you can officially join a Toastmasters club. And because of the pandemic, mostly all of the clubs, at least all of the clubs or most of the clubs in the United States are meeting virtually. And you had a lot of virtual clubs that started up. So you have people that are in the same club, but they may be from Indonesia, they may be from India, they may be from Texas in the United States. Now there is a way for everybody to gather and form a club virtually. So Toastmasters has really embraced the virtual club aspect, and that has opened the door for a lot of people to get involved in Toastmasters that normally wouldn't have the opportunity to be involved in Toastmasters. Now, if you don't even have the opportunity to do that, organize something yourself. So you can start a small group that meets up maybe every couple of weeks, and you just create speeches and you have evaluations. So it's kind of like a book club, but instead of going over a book, you're going over somebody's speech, you're going over somebody's presentation, and you're giving them advice on how to improve. And just to give people the basic structure of a Toastmasters meeting, you always start with the prepared speeches. So speeches are usually about 5 to 7 minutes in length, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less, depending on the objective. But you have the prepared speeches, and then you have the evaluations. So the evaluations are done almost immediately after the speaker is done. And the evaluations can be done by one person, or it can be done by a group of people who can offer feedback and their suggestions, their thoughts and opinions. And then you have another section of the meeting, which is called table topics, which is impromptu speaking. So you just get a prompt and you speak about that prompt. You don't know what it is beforehand. You need to speak on it for 1 to 2 minutes. Okay. So everybody can start a little club like that for themselves without necessarily being associated with the Toastmasters brand. Now, of course, Toastmasters has its own curriculum and everything like that. But at the end of the day, if you really want to improve, you can start setting up something yourself.
The most important is the feedback loop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, I'm looking back at the things that you said in previous interviews and all of that. You know, I remember that you talked about sometime that you froze when you gave a speech earlier in your career, and you froze. I think it was in uni, if you can correct me. Yeah. Yes. Well, you know, my girl, when I asked her, like, I have you on the show. I said to her, like, I have Aaron Beverly on the show. And she told me, okay, you know, she as herself, like, she has a group. She is how can I say it? She's a leader of a group, of some sort of group, in her own volunteering way. And the thing is, she asked me, okay, I've heard that story and I saw it. Like, how can I work from being in a blackout state? Because often a lot of us have it. A lot of us have that freeze. All of us have that blackout, and that sucks, actually. I mean, it's a way to embarrass yourself, actually. But tell me about it. Like, in your way, what did you find that worked in those, like, places, stages, and moments?
So for me, one thing that I learned is that it's okay to pause. It's okay to pause. It's okay to not say something. It's okay to refer to your notes if you have them. A lot of times people will look down on people who use notes, but the purpose is not to look good and show people that you can memorize your entire presentation. It's to get across a message. Now, obviously, it's different if you're like in a competitive setting where you don't want to refer to notes just for the sake of time and for the fact that you're being judged. But when you're a professional speaker and your goal is to deliver some value to the audience, who cares if you remember every single line, the perfect way that you were meant to give it, and that you refer to your notes for 1 or 2 seconds? As long as they're getting the value, I don't care if you used your notes. But the other thing that you need to just become okay with is just that silence. Sometimes we blink out. Sometimes we go off topic. And then when we try to get back on topic, we forget what we were talking about beforehand. It's okay to pause. It's okay to ask your audience, hey, what was I talking about? And then they can respond. That's something that a lot of professional speakers do, actually, when they tend to go on rants. And yeah, that's really all I can say to that one. It's okay to pause. And once you pause, collect yourself and then go back to what you were saying before. And if you want to make a humorous jab at yourself because you forgot something, you can do that too. And it helps, again, to bring some levity, poke a little fun at yourself.
Because I think it's natural, actually. It happens to all of us. So if you mention it in your own experience, okay, you will say I think it comes to that point of resignation, because it happens to all of us, actually. The freezings, what did I just say? Okay, that's actually works, and that's okay. So it's also being authentic with the people because they feel it as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
When we are trying to speak, sometimes it happens that we use the you know it, actually, like the filler words.
Those filler words, yep.
Yes, indeed. And when we are speaking, and that's something that you talked with me before the podcast about Tupac over there. And the thing is, when I saw him talking, it did not use those filler words. And that's a lot better, because you're dragging a speech when you're using those filler words. You're just, it's not fun to listen to somebody like that. So what are your tips about and not, well, the thing is, not using those filler words, because those filler words can hurt you eventually. Like, what helped you, for example?
Yeah. So filler words can definitely be a challenge if they're used excessively. And that's the real problem, is when they're used excessively. I remember there was one presentation that was given when I was at my old job. And this guy, he was a super senior level guy at my job. And every other word was just an every other word. It was so bad. What I was literally pinching myself just so that I could stay awake. And this is with 2 cups of coffee in me already.
Oh, that's horrible. That's actually horrible.
It was the most boring presentation that I have ever experienced. I don't remember anything that he said. I just remember how boring he was. That's the most drastic case of filler words that I've ever experienced. So I feel that there just can't be anybody who is as bad as that guy was. So it is okay to use a few filler words here or there. Don't kick yourself because you said in a speech that was an hour long. Number one, nobody's going to care. Nobody probably even noticed. It's when you're excessively doing it that you need to take some action. And one of the things that I tell people to do is to slow down. Slow down your speaking rate. If you normally talk super fast when you talk casually with your friends, try to step that back a little bit when you're speaking in a professional setting. And it's not a matter of you can't do it, you can't speak fast or faster anyway. It's that you don't want to have an occasion where you fumble over your words, you say something that you shouldn't have said, all because your brain and your mouth weren't syncing. So I feel that when you slow down and you consciously slow down, those filler words will decrease exponentially. And I don't know what the science is behind this, but there was something that I noticed when I would give another piece of advice to people. I would tell them to speak through a smile. So speaking through a smile helps them to enunciate a little bit better. But one thing it also did was help them slow down. And also when I noticed that they weren't using as many filler words. So I think this could possibly be for 2 reasons. It's because you're consciously thinking about doing something. So you're consciously thinking about smiling or baring your teeth while you talk so that you can enunciate better. And you're subconsciously slowing down your rate of speech. And then you're subconsciously using less filler words, because I think, again, it's because you're slowing down that speech. So it's still in hypothesis. I still don't know if it's an exact science, but I feel that when people are focused on doing something else, they forget to use filler words.
Well, actually, check that science after the show, and just in case that's right, actually, I'll link it down below. Why not? Why not? Because I think it's because we as humans cannot multitask like that. It's like breathing. What is the example? Like if you do something and you cannot breathe from the nose, for example. I don't remember actually, but it's because we cannot multitask in our own body because we're trying to focus on one.
Like you can't sneeze and breathe or something at the same time.
You cannot eat and breathe, I think.
Yeah, you cannot. Yeah, you cannot swallow and breathe at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So that's the science, I guess. I don't know, man. Well, either way, like two last questions actually. Who is Aaron, the guy after the show, after we end it? What do you do, like in terms of making yourself a better person, or trying to maximize who you can be? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So I'm actually trying to get more into journaling and just writing things down. One of the things that I noticed that really helped me last year was writing down my goals and just keeping them written and put them on a page that I refer to every day. And it really just helped me focus exactly what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve. But then too, it was a matter of journaling efficiently. So I can't do 10 million things. I need to concentrate on what's the most important thing. And if I really concentrate on that, then that's what I will end up achieving. And at a faster rate than I would have if I just tried to do all 20 million different things that I wanted to do. So with that being said, a lot of my concentration now is on YouTube. I'm putting a lot of focus into getting better with that. So that's what my journaling is about. Just how can I grow my YouTube channel? How can I become a better teacher of public speaking topics? What other topics can I teach? That's what I am trying to improve upon. That's what I want to get better at. And it starts with journaling. So my answer would be journaling and YouTube. And when I'm not doing that, I find some time to eat and sleep.
Wow, I'll tell you what, like about YouTube, something that I've noticed, because like our attention span is getting decreased with each year. From what I heard from a study from 2000, we have 7 seconds of attention span or 8, something along those lines. We have a smaller attention span than, I think, jellyfish.
Goldfish.
A goldfish, rather. Yeah. Well, so didn't you think about moving to TikTok, for example, and changing your medium in terms of that?
I think one day I will, but it's a matter of that focus again. So I do believe that there is going to be a place for long form content. I don't think that it's going to ever go away, because if that was the case, then Netflix would be non-existent right now. Disney Plus would be non-existent. So there is still a place for long form content. It's just making sure that you find the right audience on the right platform for that. So I'm not going to make a 1-minute YouTube video because my audience doesn't really want that from me. They like the best performing videos that I have are those videos where I analyze somebody's speech, where I go into details. And some of those videos are 30 and 40 minutes long. One of my best performing videos is actually a keynote that I gave back in 2019, or maybe it was 2020, early 2020. And for that speech, that's about an hour long, and it's one of my best performing videos. So there is a place for long form and short form content. So, but it goes again, that golden rule, know your audience. Do you have an audience that prefers short form content, or do you have an audience that will prefer deeper diving into long form content? So yeah, that's what I would say. So eventually maybe I'll get into that, but I'm putting my focus on to the long form YouTube content right now.
In Facebook, do they like more long form content, I think, because it's the older demographic? Did you think about it?
Honestly, I thought about Facebook for a while, but I really didn't pursue it because it just wasn't as easy as YouTube. Because like when I go to Facebook, I'm just going to connect with friends. I'm not going to go to Facebook and type in how to become a better public speaker. Like I'm going to put that into YouTube. I'm going to put that into Google. So it's again, that knowing your audience. When I'm on Facebook, what do I usually do? And if I'm not doing something, why would I expect my audience to do it? So one of the things that I have learned from this is not just in public speaking, but in life, I'm not going to speak about what I don't like. I'm not going to speak about what I don't know. So I'm not going to, and in the same vein, I'm not going to pursue something that I don't like. I'm not going to pursue something that I myself would not do. I'm not going to sell something that I wouldn't buy myself. So that mindset is something that I keep in almost every single thing that I do.
Because you're at a stage that you know oneself, that you know who you are, and that's critical to know. Well, as a final question, actually, is knowing one thyself. What is the advice that you can give to young adults or like 30 to 20 years old like those people who try to make the best out of themselves, like what is the advice you can give to them in order for them to maximize who they can be and live probably a better life from your own perspective?
Yeah. The answer to that for me is communication and speaking. I didn't go to an Ivy League college. I don't have a master's degree or a PhD. I'm not a doctor, a scientist, or anything like that. I just really dove into learning more about public speaking and how to articulate my thoughts and opinions to other people. And that has taken me a very long way. I've gotten to travel around the world because of public speaking. I've been able to get raises because of public speaking. I've been able to get a new job and another raise because of public speaking. So public speaking and becoming better at communicating has 100% changed my life. Now, it hasn't gotten me a wife yet, but I'm working on that now. That'll be my next focus after YouTube. But the point is that I'm focusing on building my communication skills because communication is basically a foundation of life. Public speaking is a foundation of life. And if you can master that, you're going to have a really good life.
You're going to have a really good life by mastering communications. Well, that's powerful, man, because it's what we do in everyday task. And that's what we do right now, actually, talking in a casual way also. And I would think that like it was a great podcast and great having you on. And actually you can just as the links that you see on Spotify or on YouTube, you can follow Aaron in every social media and also on YouTube that you can. Like there's a lot of links down there. You can just click. I would advise you. Like there's a lot of good content. You know what? Not some. A lot of Aaron's content is so good that I would advise you, even for the average Joe, just to connect there and just to click on the video and watch it. They're so high quality, in my opinion, because Aaron gives you that experience and just gives you also that funny touch that we talked about in the beginning of the video and does it in a comedic way. A comedic way? How do you say?
Comedic,
yeah. Comedic way, yeah. And also the analyzing of the speeches. Yeah, they are also great. Well, thank you for being here. And also, like, do you have a final message for the audience, maybe?
Yeah, and that is just go out and speak.
Yeah, go out and speak. That was me, WeTalkPodcast, Moshe, and that was Aaron Beverly. And you can also follow him on his YouTube channel that we talked about. That's it. Bye. Well, let me just finish it.